Let's talk about debt. One of the biggest things holding Americans back from building wealth in this country is the amount of debt that they're sitting in. And, look, I think you learn from your leaders. And the leaders in the United States love debt. I mean, just look at the Federal Reserve. They just keep piling on more and more debt. I mean, look at the amount of public debt that the Federal Reserve takes on and doesn't care. Just look at that. In the past few months alone, in 2020, public debt has skyrocketed. Federal Reserve of the United States is in massive debt. So we learn from our leaders. They tell us debt is fine. Isn't that amazing? And yet other countries don't suffer this problem. Other countries don't have this problem at all. Did you know that? I don't know how many of you actually knew this about Europe and other countries. For instance, the bank Santander, in Spain, if you want to get a business account in Spain, a business account, not even a personal credit card, I think the limit is about $7,000 that you're allowed to get as a business on a credit card. And even then, you have to have enough of that money in the bank as a proportionality of that amount of credit, meaning you basically have to have $7,000 in the bank to get $7,000 in credit. Now, there are different banks and different things around the world, but my point is that in Europe and other places, they don't even allow you to have credit cards. The most you'll get in a credit card is like a $500 credit limit for a personal card. And even then, you have to have about $500 in your account to even get the card and to basically there at all times in order to cover it. And on top of that, they don't have huge student loan debt that we have in the United States. They have free public college. When I went to the University of Pittsburgh, I remember I got a Bank of America credit card because they had a table set up at the student union. The university allowed the bank to come there and set up a table so they could get students in debt. Bank of America is paying the University of Pittsburgh, right? Of course, that's how it works. Let's get them young. Let's get them in debt young. By the way, I was paying off student loan debt at the same time. Student loan debt, and now I got a credit card. And they don't care. Huge corporate write-offs for them. They know that only a percentage of people are going to pay this debt back, but that's good enough for them. Americans are saddled with debt. And until we get our debt under control, we're never going to really be able to build wealth. So more than 40% right now of Americans have this amount of debt. I mean, I even think that's small. Of you watching right now, let me know in the comments below, how much debt do you have? Is it more than $9,000 in credit card debt? I mean, that's the average according to valuepenguin.com. I think it's higher than that. It sounds low to me, but I think it's higher, especially with student loan debt thrown in there. Credit card debt's one thing. With student loan debt on all of that too, I'd be curious your thoughts. But here's the tricky thing about credit cards. It's so sexy to get one of these credit cards because you think, oh, I'm going to get airline points, I'm going to get cash back rewards and all of that. Great. I use credit cards all the time for my business, but I pay them off every month. So if I'm running a certain, Facebook promotion or a Google advertising promotion or something else, right? Or I have a software that I use every month I pay it off. And I know consistently that I'm paying it off. So I accrue all of these airline points. And then I'm able to travel for free. Or I use that money because I'm not really traveling much at all. And I'm using that as cash back to pay down those debts and get them more quickly down to zero. But you have to understand how it works. And you have to be prepared to know that this bill is coming due and I have to have the income and revenue from that for my business to be able to cover it. Right? That's intelligent use of your credit cards. But sadly, most people aren't. When I first started out, I was $75,000 in debt. Got that credit card on Student Union campus, and I got more and more credit cards. And I was in debt. I was only making $21,000 a year. My credit was bad. I've been there. So how did I pay it off? That's what I'm going to go through today. I have 5 different ways that you can pay off your debt. And one way, 2 of the ways that actually 4 of the ways I've used, if I think about it now, 4 of the ways I've used to pay off debt over the years. And I'm going to walk through each of them now. So, you have average interest rates around 17%. So if you don't pay off these debts, it just snowballs. It can crush you. Then people are filing for personal bankruptcy, and it's just awful. So don't go down that road. There are ways to start to build wealth while you're paying off this debt as well. So let's go through the 5 ways. Number 1 is a debt avalanche program. So a debt avalanche basically means you're tackling the highest interest rate credit card. You know, if you've got a number of credit cards and one of them is a 23% interest rate, you kind of want to go after that one first, according to the debt avalanche. Now, my wife and I kind of disagree on this. She's more of a debt avalanche proponent, which is, you know, because she just sees X's and O's, ones and zeros, and she's like, that's a 23% interest rate. Let's go after that one because it has the higher interest rate. And I agree with that. You know, that's not a bad approach. In fact, that's the more, perhaps, I don't want to say intelligent approach, because I like to think I'm pretty intelligent. So is my wife. It's the more rational approach because it comes down to simple math. But the problem is we are not rational people. And so the second way to pay off debt is the snowball approach, which is the approach that I used to get out of debt. And I think Dave Ramsey talks about this as well, snowball approach. I think he's a little of both. I don't know. I disagree with Dave Ramsey on a lot of things. So I'm not going to bash Dave Ramsey. He's very great at helping people get out of debt. But there's a lot I disagree with him on the investing front, putting your money in the stock market and mutual funds and other crap. I've read his books. I just cringe when I think about his investing strategies. But let's talk about the snowball versus avalanche approach here. Let's go to the whiteboard, shall we? So let's say we have 4 different credit cards here. Okay, number 1, we've got one that's at $500 debt, right? But that's got 0 balance. So maybe you've got a new credit card. Like that's the one I had at the University of Pittsburgh. It had a $500 limit and it had a 0 balance when I first got it. Of course, I didn't pay my bills on it right away. I went to the CD store and bought a few REM CDs. And then pretty soon that interest rate ended up jumping up, right? But nevertheless, let's just say this is your current status. You've got 0% and $500 on that card. Okay, we're not going to really worry about that card at all. Number 2, you got a $5,000 credit card at 15% interest. Your third credit card, you have $2,500 on there, and that's at 23% interest. Number 4 is a $1,000 credit card at 17% interest. I'm going to turn this off because my little girl keeps asking to buy. She keeps asking to buy Robux. She's home from school today. That's not going to happen on my watch. So 4 different credit cards: $500, $5,000, $2,500, and $1,000. You see the different interest rates in this column over here. Okay. So now in the avalanche method, if you're watching right now, which would you pick? Which of these credit cards would signify the avalanche method? Yes, you're right. So the avalanche method, you would be going after this credit card at 23% interest. That's the avalanche, okay? That's the avalanche approach. But see, I operate more under the snowball. Because what I want to do is I want to go after the lowest hanging fruit as quickly as possible. Because as human beings, interestingly, we like little victories. If you buy an app in the App Store, if you buy a game app in the App Store, the reason that the games are constructed for you to win within the first few levels, like you play level 1 and you win and you do well on that first level, and then the second level, they make it easy enough for you to win, it's a dopamine rush. And the way that the games are constructed is this way on purpose because we like little victories. So you imagine and it has in-app purchases. So let's imagine you downloaded an app and you kept losing in the very first level. Are you going to want to advance to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th levels? You're frustrated. You're probably going to close the app out and not play it again. Well, then that app developer is not going to make any money when you get to level 8 and you need to buy some coins or something, digital coins like in Robux or whatever. If you can't have little victories in the first level, you're never going to make it to level 8. That's how human brains work. That's how mine works. I know when I'm starting a new project or a new entrepreneurial project and I have a little victory in the beginning, man, that's so motivating, isn't it? And the same thing is true of paying off debt. So again, my wife is right. This approach to the avalanche would be smart. I'm going after the highest interest rate and trying to get rid of this $2,500 as soon as I can. But the way that I work and the way the snowball method works is that I want to go after this one. Get rid of this altogether right away. And now I've only got 3 left. And I know it might sound counterintuitive, but this is the way the human brain works. Going after the low-hanging fruit, getting rid of that first. This is exactly how I did it. When I had all of my debt listed on a spreadsheet, I had it all, I made a graph paper, and I sat there when I was in Dayton, Ohio, and I was miserable in debt. And I sat there and I wrote down all of my credit cards and my student loan debt and my car payment, and I mapped them out by graph. And every month I just kept chiseling away at the lowest hanging fruit. And I went from like 7 credit cards to 6 credit cards, 6 to 5. And before you knew it, all of these were gone. Because then I'm going to go after the next lowest hanging fruit in the snowball method. Then I'm going to go after this one. Then that'll be gone. And then I'm going after this one. Then that'll be gone. Then I'm down to 1 card. And the entire time I'm just making minimum payments on these other ones until I can tackle them head on. So that's the snowball versus avalanche method. Those are 2 different strategies that I love. The third thing that you need to do is, or you could use in your arsenal, is a balance transfer option. This is something else that I've done. You know, if you're heavy into credit cards, that very often you'll be offered a new credit card with a 0% interest. Now, there are people that will say, don't do that. Don't open a new credit card with a 0% transfer balance because you're going to have another credit card now to deal with. Don't listen to those people. It's just another financial product. It's just another tool for you to use. So again, let's look at this snowball chart here. I know it's a little messy right now. I know you've been making fun of me in the chat for this. So let's say I get a 5th credit card now, okay? Let's say I get a 5th credit card at, I start with a 0 balance, but it's got a 0% interest rate. And I can take all of these cards and move them over here at 0% interest. I consolidate all of it right here. Now I'm not paying these exorbitant fees. The key here is that you don't want to increase it, okay? Please do not go about increasing this money. Don't spend anything more on this. Transfer it over and start tackling the payments. Make way higher payments than your minimum balance. Go all in on it. I stopped spending money on anything. Every penny that I had went towards paying down that debt. All of it. I didn't go out. I didn't go out to dinner. I didn't do any of that. I saved, I scrimped. I didn't go to Starbucks. I didn't waste money. I just went right after it like crazy. I was like a dog with a bone. And then before you know it, that'll all be gone. All of that debt will be wiped away because you tried that strategy. So don't be scared of transferring a balance to a 0% interest credit card that lasts for 18 to 24 months. You just bought yourself 18 or 24 months, 2 years with a 0% interest. Do it. But please cut up those other cards. Cut them up. And frankly, don't even use the new card that you transferred it to. The fourth thing that you want to do is debt consolidation. Now, I got burned big time by a debt consolidation company in the early 2000s. In fact, I think they ended up getting sued. There was a big class action lawsuit against them at one point. Fortunately, I didn't work with them for very long, but they actually did help me. And what they did was they consolidated all of my debt. The problem is that they shouldn't do it for a fee. The problem is that I ended up, like, the first month's payment for what should have gone to my credit cards went to them. And then every month after that, they were making the payments for me in the form of like one payment. It was, in that way, it was a ripoff. A debt consolidation service, frankly, shouldn't charge you anything. They're going to make their money by consolidating it and then getting the interest from those payments. Like, they should be working with the banks on this consolidation program. So don't fall for that one like I did, but that can actually work. But to me, this is almost just like getting this fifth credit card with 0% interest. If you can manage it yourself, and I know the problem is that you got in this mess to begin with, do you trust yourself? It's like, okay, you're overweight. Do I trust you with a candy bar? You know? You struggle with weight loss, and then I put a pile of Snickers bars in front of you. The fifth thing that you can do to get out of credit card debt is to take out a personal loan. Now, this is another strategy that I've used over the years, is using a home equity line of credit, or you could even use a personal loan. There are many different loan options available to you. You could even work with a local bank to get a debt consolidation loan. But let's talk about the home equity line of credit. I think the home equity line of credit is a fantastic option because, remember, I always say you cannot eat equity. So if you live in a home where you have $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 in equity in that home, get a home equity line of credit from your local bank. Remember, they will give you a line of credit that'll start with a zero balance. Okay? They're not giving you a check. They're going to give you a line of credit with a zero balance. And now let's say you owe $17,000 in high interest credit card debt. You could then just write a check in one afternoon and have all of that debt wiped out. Remember, that equity is something you're sitting on in your house. You're not doing anything with it. Why wouldn't you leverage that debt? Now, I've used home equity lines of credit, one of my favorite ways to invest in real estate. So if you live in a house that's not a performing asset, remember, if you live in a home where you're paying somebody else, that's not bringing cash into your pocket every month. You could use that home equity that you have in that house to buy a rental property. Imagine taking $30,000 or $40,000 out of a home equity as down payment on a rental property. Like, those are the types of rental properties that we do at our company. So you could actually put a down payment and have cash flow coming in from a cash flowing tenant paying in a brand new construction rental property. Smart move. But when we're talking about the credit card debt specifically, you're transferring basically one financial product for another. And get out of 23% interest rates is a killer strategy to use a home equity line of credit or other personal loan where you can have a much lower interest rate, or consolidating that into one loan payment. So these are just some of the options. Now, if you'd like more information or how to accelerate your financial freedom, we built our own Financial Freedom Bootcamp. It's a 90-day bootcamp. It's totally free. You can download it at morninginvest.com/bootcamp. And each week we take you through the next step in the bootcamp in order to get out of debt and build financial freedom. It's the exact strategy that my wife and I used. It's totally free to download, but I want you to stick to the plan. Okay. Again, morninginvest.com/bootcamp. And if we brought you any value at all, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for your questions, and we will see you next time.